chapter 2, text 49 onwards. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 49. Durena hi avaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddhau sharanam anvicha kripana phalahetavaha.
O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers.
Text 50. Buddhi yukta jahatiha ube sukrita dushkrite tasmad yogaya yajyashva yoga karmasu kaushalam.
A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work.
Text 51. Karmajam buddhi yuktahi phalam tyaktva manishinaha janma bandha vinirmuktaha padam gacchanti anamayam.
By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to Godhead.
Text 52. Yada te moha kalilam buddhirvyati tarishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha.
When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard.
Text 53. Shruti vipratipanate yada stashyati nischala samadhav achala buddhis tada yogam avapshashi.
When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness.
Text 54. Arjunuvacha stita prajnasya kabhasa samadhista shya keshava stita dihi kim prabhasheta kim ashita vrajeta kim.
Arjuna said, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? And what is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk?
Text 55. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvam Partha Manogatam Atmani Eva Jnanatushtaha Stita Prajnastadocyate.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from material concoction, mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness.
Text 56. Dukeshva anudvigna manaha sukeshu vigata spraha vitaraga bhaya krodha stita dhir munir uchyate.
One who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated even when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind.
Text 57. Yaha sarvatra nabhishnehas tat tat prapya subhashubham nabhinandati nadveshti tasya prajna pratishtita.
In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge.
Text 58. Yada samharate chayam
Ayam kamoni
mo anagniva sarvasaha indriyanindriyarthebhyas tasya prajna pratishtita.
One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness.
Text 59. Vishaya vinivartante niraharyasya dehinaha rasavarjam rasopi asya param drishtva nirvantate.
Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness.
Text 60. Yatato hi api kunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramatini haranti prashabam manaha.
The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them.
Text 61. Tani sarvani samyamyam yukta ashita matparaha vasehi yashendriyani tasya prajna pratishtita.
One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence.
Text 63. Krodad bhavati samoha samohat smriti vibramaha smriti. Have I missed one? Sorry.
Yeah, you.
Sorry, 62. Text 62. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangashteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodam vijayate.
While contemplating the object of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises.
Text 63. Krodhat bhavati samoha somahat smriti vibramaha smriti brahma sat buddhi naso buddhi nasat pranashyati.
From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool.
Text 64. Ragadvesha vimuktestu vishayan indriyascharan atma vishyar videyatma prasadam adhigacchati.
But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord.
Text 65. Prasade sarva dukhanam hanir ashyopajayate prasanna chetaso hiyasu buddhi paryavatishtate.
For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established.
Text 66. Nasti buddhira yuktasya na cha yuktasya bhavana na cha bhavayata santir Ashantasya kuta sukham.
One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace?
Text 67. Indriyanam hi charatam ya yanmano anuvidyat tad asya harati prajnam vayur navam ivam pasi.
As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away man's intelligence.
Text 68. Tasmadyashya mahabaho nigrahitani sarvasaha indriyan tepyas tasya prajna pratishtita.
Therefore, O mighty armed one, whose senses are restrained from their objects, is certainly of steady intelligence.
Text 69. Yanisa sarva bhutanam tasyam jagrati samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sanisa pashyato muneha.
What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-control, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage.
Text 70. Apuryamanam achalam pratishtam samudram apa pravishanti yadvata tadvat kamayam pravishyanti sarve sasantim apnoti na kama kami.
A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires.
Text 71. Vihaya kaman ya sarvan pumam charati nishpraha nirmama nirahankara sasantim adigachati.
A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace.
Text 72. Esha brahmi stiti partha nainam prapya vimuhyati stitvasyam antakale api brahma nirvanam rachati.
That is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of its contents.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Apologies.
Thank you so much, Hema Mataji and Prabhu. That was wonderful. There's some echo coming. I'm not sure what's okay. That's better now. That was wonderful recitation. Thank you, Hema Mataji and Prabhuji. I'm just trying to get everybody to mute so that. All right, so we will continue our journey, chapter 2. Yesterday, of course, we had the wonderful session with His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj. I'm sure you all must have really, really enjoyed it. Maharaj has such a nice way of giving his classes, isn't it? All right. Can you all see the screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Mataji.
Thank you. Okay. So today we are doing chapter 2, verse number 52. Is the screen clear?
Yes, I think, yes, Mataji, please.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Um,
Thank you very much. So we will do chapter 2, verse 22. I'll
I
just
think
recite.
the slides, the presentation, we can see the notes and the slides at the bottom. Is that how you want it?
Not really.
Mm.
So give me 1 minute. That's why I thought, let me just
Yeah.
check.
Mhm.
Yes. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Oh. End of show. Zoom. Screen. There we go. Is this better?
Yeah, but if you, yeah, that's better now. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. Right, okay. I've been using the presenter view for our Janmashtami training sessions. So I kind of got used to that. So I forgot that here I don't need the presenter view actually. Thank you, Kusum Mataji. All right, so we will continue with our chapter 2, verse 52 today. So I'll just recite the verse. Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyatitarishyati tada gantashi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. Anybody would like to read the purport?
I can try.
Please, Kusumataji, go ahead.
There are many good examples in the lives of the great devotees of the Lord, of those who become indifferent to the rituals of the Vedas simply by devotional service to the Lord. When a person factually understands Krishna and his relationship with Krishna, he naturally becomes completely indifferent to the rituals of fruitive activities, even though an experienced Brahmana, Sri Madhvendra Puri, a great devotee and acharya in the line of the devotees, says, Sandhya Vandana Bhadram Astu Bhavato Bose Snana Tubhyam Namo Bhyo Deva Pitarascha Tarpana Vidhu Naham Kishma Kashamyatam Yatra Kwapi Nishadhya Yadava Kulotam Sasya Kamshadvisha Smaram Smaram Agham Harami Tad Alam Manye Kim Anyane Me. O my prayers, 3 times a day, all glory to you. O bathing, I offer my obeisances unto you. O demigods, O forefathers, please excuse me for my inability to offer you my respects. Now, wherever I sit, I can remember the great descendant of the Yadu dynasty, Krishna, the enemy of Kamsa, and thereby I can free myself from all sinful bondage. I think this is sufficient for me. The Vedic rites and rituals are imperative for neophytes, comprehending all kinds of prayers 3 times a day, taking a bath early in the morning, offering respect to the forefathers, etc. But when one is fully in Krishna consciousness and is engaged in his transcendental loving service, one becomes indifferent to all these regulative principles because he has already attained perfection. If one can reach the platform of understanding by service to the Supreme Lord Krishna, he has no longer to execute different types of penances and sacrifices as recommended in revealed scriptures. And similarly, if one has not understood that the purpose of the Vedas is to reach Krishna and simply engages in the rituals, etc., then he is uselessly wasting time in such engagements. Persons in Krishna consciousness transcend the limit of Shabda Brahma or the range of the Vedas and Upanishads. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Kusumataji. So before we discuss this verse, we'll just say some prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatirubhascha Kripa Sindhubheva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Okay. So this verse, very, very deep philosophical topics actually. I'm going to take some really key principles here. Very important key principles from here. Obviously, we'll try to discuss it with some stories so that, you know, it's easy for all of us to understand and remember. But some really important points. Right. So let's start. First thing, in the purport, Prabhupada is saying there are many good examples in the lives of great devotees of the Lord, of those who became indifferent to the rituals of the Vedas simply by devotional service to the Lord. So, what we'll do is we will try and learn some lessons from the life of Devananda Pandit and a devotee called Dukhi. So these two characters appear in the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Maybe some of you must have heard the stories, but if not, that's fine because we will speak about them and, you know, we'll touch upon the lives of both of them briefly. So now Devananda Pandit, he was, you know, we celebrate the appearance and disappearance day of so many of our great Vaishnava acharyas. We also celebrate the disappearance day of Devananda Pandit. So, what is so great about Devananda Pandit? And our acharyas tell us that the very essence of philosophy of Gaudiya Vaishnavism is revealed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through few incidents that happen in the life of Devananda Pandit. And that is why we must very, very carefully listen to these particular episodes. Because if we don't take lessons from here, then all of our learnings and austerities will be futile. Because this here is going to teach us the most important lessons in our through these stories. You know, the most important principles of Gaudiya Vaishnavism is being taught to us. So Devananda Pandit was, he appeared during the Leelas of Mahaprabhu. He was born in a Brahmana family. He had absolutely no material desires, very, very moral and pious, very well versed in all the different religious scriptures, very austere, you know, performed all his regulative principles. He would regularly recite from the Srimad Bhagavatam. There was no other scripture that he would recite from. And he was such a good learned scholar of the Srimad Bhagavatam that he had a number of students who would come to learn the Srimad Bhagavatam from Devananda Pandit. He resided in Navadvip Dham, where Mahaprabhu was also residing at that time. So one day while he was teaching his students and reciting from the Srimad Bhagavatam, another well-known associate of Mahaprabhu, Srivas Pandit, came to his ashram and sat there listening to this Bhagavatam recitation. And Srivas Pandit, after hearing this, went into a trance. He was ecstatic. He was so happy that he started sighing and making the sounds of somebody who is unaware of his external surroundings. Now, seeing this, the students of Devananda Pandit, thought that, they laughed at him. They thought, how is this man behaving? Why is he making these kinds of weird sounds? And what they felt is that he's disturbing the class. So they, conferred with each other, and they decided that we must throw this man out of the ashram. And so they picked him up and they put him out in the street. They threw him out on the street. When Srivas Pandit came to external consciousness, he was extremely embarrassed at the state that he was in. Obviously, being a devotee of the Lord, he did not say anything. He just went back to his house. But Prabhupada explains that how a student behaves is a reflection of the teacher. And Devananda Pandit did not stop this misbehavior of his students. He just stood and watched, and that is why this was a very big offense to the great Vaishnav, Srivas Pandit. And because of this offense, although Devananda Pandit was able to see Mahaprabhu, he resided in the same area, he heard of the glories of Mahaprabhu, he actually face to face saw Mahaprabhu also, but that love did not develop in his heart because he had committed an offense to a great Vaishnav. So much so that once when Mahaprabhu was passing by the house of Devananda Pandit, he heard him reciting the Bhagavatam, and he started saying, "Who is this rascal who is reciting the Bhagavatam?" Um, Bhagavatam can be recited by people who have love for the Lord. And in his voice, I can feel absolutely no love. I am going to go and rip him apart right now. And he started running towards the house of Devananda Pandit, and he had to be stopped by his devotees. After that, after a few days, when Mahaprabhu was walking in the dham with Srivas Thakur, he saw Devananda Pandit and he said to him, "You are the same rascal who was reciting the Bhagavatam. How dare you recite the Bhagavatam? You have no love for the Lord. You have no love for the disciples, the devotees of the Lord." But Devananda Pandit was so it wasn't that he was puffed up with his knowledge, but he was just so engrossed in his gyan that he did not understand why Mahaprabhu was chastising him. Anyways, after some time, Mahaprabhu went on to take sannyas, and then he started residing in Jagannath Puri. While he was in Jagannath Puri, he had many, many close associates, and one of them was Vakreshwar Pandit. Now, Vakreshwar Pandit was an expert at singing and dancing. He used to sing so beautifully, he used to dance so beautifully that it is said that the demigods would come when Vakreshwar Pandit was chanting and dancing just to see him, take darshan of him. So one day, Vakreshwar Pandit was passing by through Navadip Dham performing Nam Sankirtan. While he was performing Nam Sankirtan, he happened to go into the ashram of Devananda Pandit. And when Devananda Pandit saw Vakreshwar Pandit, he was completely touched by the humility and the compassion of this wonderful devotee. So much so that in his heart he had the desire to serve him sincerely. So this was the desire that he had, and his service, how he served him was, when Vakreshwar Pandit used to dance, he used to have ecstatic symptoms. He had tears rolling down his eyes, his hair would stand on end, he would lose external consciousness. He was just completely absorbed. So when Vakreshwar Pandit would dance, people would surround him. And the service that Devananda Pandit took upon himself is that he would stand with a stick so that nobody could disturb Vakreshwar Pandit when he was in his ecstasy, when he was performing the Nam Sankirtan. So he would try and keep the area clear where Vakreshwar Pandit was dancing. Now, this was his sincere service. He did not do it out of any expectation. But then, after a few days, when Mahaprabhu then visited Navadip Dham, and at that time, a lot of fallen souls actually approached Mahaprabhu, saying that when you were here, when you resided here, we did not understand who you are. We did not give you the respect that you deserve. We did not have any faith in you. But now we have understood our mistakes. So people like I'll say some names. Some people know it, but if you don't know, don't worry about it. These are just some pastimes which we will eventually read about. So people like Gopala Chappala and all the other fallen brahmanas of Navadvip went to Mahaprabhu begging for forgiveness. But Devananda Pandit, even at that time, could not bring himself to go in front of Mahaprabhu because he knew he had committed such great offenses to Srivas Thakur and to Mahaprabhu himself. But when Mahaprabhu saw him, he said to Devananda Pandit, "You have pleased my devotee. You have, served my devotee sincerely. And thus now I want to see you, so you can come to me." And this way, then, Mahaprabhu gave his mercy to Devananda Pandit. Now, why we are discussing these stories? Simply because the statement that is, sorry, there's some sound, I'm just going to mute people. Yeah, we are discussing these stories simply because the statement that is being made over here, the first statement is being made is that um, the great devotees of the Lord who became indifferent to the rituals of the Vedas simply by devotional service. So here we can see that Devananda Pandit, such a well-known scholar, well-versed in all the scriptures, but because he did not have any devotion to the Lord, all of this was simply a waste. Shrama eva hi kevalam, in the Bhagavatam it says that this is simply a waste. But as soon as he developed this faith in the Lord, and how did he develop the faith? By serving a devotee of the Lord. So knowing the Vedas, performing all the rituals, if it is not going to lead you to the Lord, it is all a waste. Now we'll see another example, another story. This is a story of a maid servant who used to work in Srivas Thakur's household. So one day, there was a festival, and her job was to bring pots of water from the Ganga, and she would give it to the devotees in order to perform Abhishek of Mahaprabhu. And that was constantly that what she did. She just got pots of water from the Ganga, lined them up very nicely so that it is ready when the devotees need it to perform the Abhishek. Mahaprabhu saw these pots of water and he asked Srivas Thakur, who is doing this service? And Srivas Thakur said, this is Dukhi who is doing it. And Mahaprabhu says, Dukhi name does not suit her. She is doing such a wonderful service. Her name from now on should be Sukhi. Now, why we are listening to this story again is this is a maid servant who is not educated, who does not read the Vedas or any other scriptures, doesn't know the Bhagavatam, but she has this deep love, deep faith in Mahaprabhu. And you can see that then Mahaprabhu is bestowing his mercy on this maid servant. So again, this is a repetition of the teachings of the Gita, where it says that your birth doesn't matter, your caste doesn't matter, your education doesn't matter, your material opulences doesn't matter. What matters is your bhakti, your devotion to the Lord. And only devotion can attract the mercy of the Lord. there's another story, and I'm sure most of you will know the story. The story is of the cobbler and the Brahmin. Now, there's two versions of the story. So I'm just going to tell you the version that I have heard and read. But there is another version in the sense that how this whole story comes about. So one day, Narad Muni was, as you know, Narad Muni travels from not just from place to place, he can travel from planets, from different planets. So he was on his travels and he met a Brahmana, and the Brahmana said to him that, "Oh, Narad Muni, oh, glorious Narad Muni, you travel everywhere. Will you be going to Vaikuntha? And if you are going to Vaikuntha, then please can you ask the Lord, when will I be liberated?" The Brahmana was, he thought that, I have been performing all my rituals, all my regulative principles. So it is time that I be liberated. So he had that arrogance. So he asked, when will I be liberated? And while he was going, Narad Muni then met a cobbler, and the cobbler said, he asked Narad Muni, uh, when you go to Vaikuntha, please let me know what my Lord was doing, right? So Narad Muni went to Lord Krishna and he asked them, he said, when will the Brahmana get liberated? And the cobbler also actually had asked him the same question. He had asked Narad Muni, when will I get the chance to serve my Lord in Vaikuntha? So Narad Muni asked these questions to Krishna. And Krishna says, the Brahmin will come back to me after 100 lives. And the cobbler will come back to me after finishing this life. Now Narad Muni was confused because he also was thinking that why is the Lord saying this? The Brahmana is reading the scriptures, doing various pujas and rituals and all of that. So why is Krishna saying this? Um, so Narad Muni asked Krishna, I don't understand this. So Krishna said, you know how a teacher is. A teacher sometimes does not give you the direct answer because sometimes you learn by actually experiencing something. So the Lord said to Narad Muni that, they will ask you what I was doing. So you tell them that I was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle, right? And on seeing their reaction, you will understand everything. So that's exactly what happens when he met the Brahmin. He said to him that, the Brahmin asked him, so what did the Lord say? When will I be liberated? And Narad Muni said, well, the Lord said that you will have to wait 100 lifetimes to reach Vaikuntha. And the Brahmana was very, very angry. He was, why 100 lifetimes? I do all my daily rituals. I do all of this, how can he say this, and then he said, okay, what was the Lord doing when you saw him? So Narad Muni says, well, the Lord was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. And the Brahmana says, now I know, I am sure you did not even see the Lord, because he said, how can anybody thread an elephant through the eye of a needle? Right? Then Narad Muni met the cobbler, and the cobbler asked, what did the Lord say? When will I go back to him to serve him? So Narad Muni said, well, you will go back after just this lifetime. And the cobbler was very happy. And then the cobbler asked, what was my Lord doing? These are just normal questions, not just what he was doing. What was he wearing? How did he look? What was going on? So when you asked what was he doing, Narad Muni said, well, he was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle. And the cobbler says, oh, my Lord is great. All glories to my Lord. And Narad Muni said, do you believe this? And then the cobbler says, well, if he can put this huge tree in a small seed, then what is it that my Lord cannot do? And Narad Muni then understood what the Lord had meant, that you will understand everything. He saw that the Brahmana performed all his rituals, studied all the various scriptures, but did not have any faith. Whereas the cobbler didn't know anything about rituals, didn't know anything about, various yagyas, but he had complete faith in the Lord. And that is why, if the goal of the Vedas is not reached, and the goal of the Vedas is to understand the Supreme Lord, but if you are not reaching that goal, then there is no point in studying all these Vedas. That's exactly what is being said. The past few verses, we have been discussing this common thread that, what is the goal of life, right? So there are, of course, other stories, like we have the pastimes in Krishna's Leela, where Krishna is hungry. He asks his friends to go and get some food from the Brahmanas who were performing yagyas. But the Brahmana, did not even want to listen to the cowherd boys, whereas the Yagya Patnis, they immediately rushed, leaving everything, just, they wanted to serve Krishna. So it is not by dint of any knowledge or by performing rituals or by studying that you can get the mercy of Krishna. Sorry, can I ask everybody to please mute yourselves? I'm not sure if, anyways. Okay, so the principle here is that it is only by bhakti, it is only by devotion that we can attract Krishna. There is no other way that we can attract Krishna. We can get devotion by serving Vaishnavas. And we'll come to that point again because Prabhupada emphasizes on that again. So now in the same paragraph, Prabhupada is talking about Madhavendra Puri. Now, who is Madhavendra Puri? I'm sure many of you know. Madhavendra Puri is the spiritual master of Ishvara Puri, who is the spiritual master of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, again, the question is, why does the Lord, the Supreme Lord, he doesn't need any spiritual master? Yes, you're right. Mahaprabhu doesn't need a spiritual master. Krishna doesn't need a spiritual master. But they are here in human form to teach us through their example, So that is why Mahaprabhu has Ishvara Puri as a spiritual master. And here, Madhavendra Puri is the spiritual master. Now, Madhavendra Puri is saying that now whenever I sit, I only remember Krishna. And because I remember Krishna, that is why I don't need to do all of the other ritualistic activities. So Madhavendra Puri is seeing that. That is one point. The second point, very, very important, is one can never understand Krishna, or one can never understand bhakti unless one surrenders to a spiritual master. And in Bhagavad Gita, verse 4.34, Krishna says this. He says, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So this, again, this message which Krishna is giving to Arjuna very clearly, in clear words, there is no roundabout way of saying it, clearly saying that you have to learn the truth. You can only learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. This message is repeated again and again in various scriptures, like in the Bhagavatam, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in our Upanishads. And Prabhupada very often quotes this. This is not the entire verse, but he quotes this particular line where he says, Tad Vijnanartham sa gurum eva bhi gachet. To understand these things properly, one must humbly approach with firewood in hand a spiritual master who is learned in the Vedas and firmly devoted to the absolute truth. So there are two lessons that we are learning from the because Madhavendra Puri has come in this verse, and the lessons that we are learning here is that Madhavendra Puri himself, being an acharya and a great learned scholar, is saying that once we come to this position where we surrender to Krishna, then there is no need for any ritualistic activities. But how does one come to that position? Only if we take shelter of a spiritual master. On our own, we cannot understand who is Lord and what is my relation with Lord. It is only under the instructions of the spiritual master. So this was a second important point for the day. Of course, this is just a verse from the Bhagavatam where the same thing is being reiterated, saying that unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, completely freed from material contaminations, persons very much inclined towards materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord. So again, the same thing is being repeated in the purport. Prabhupada says that, why is it that sometimes very highly educated persons don't take to Krishna consciousness? That is because they don't take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, because they think that I am already so highly educated. I can read the scriptures on my own. I can understand on my own. But Prabhupada time and time again said, you can understand the scriptures only in the association of the devotees. And I can say it from my own self, my own example. When I started my journey in Krishna consciousness and I tried to read the Bhagavad Gita on my own, I could not even go beyond the introduction. I was just stuck on the introduction with so many questions because I was reading it through my material vision and I could not understand why this and why that. And I was trying to judge, this is not right, that is not right. And that is why one must always try to understand scriptures in the association of devotees under the guidance of a spiritual master. Now, the final point from today's verse is, I know it's 7:30. I think I'll take 5 minutes more. The final point says, persons in Krishna consciousness transcend the limit of Shabda Brahma or the range of the Vedas and Upanishads. Now here, Shabda Brahma is sound vibration. So Brahman meaning which is all pervading. Now we know that sound is all pervading. Everywhere there is sound. There's sound in air, there's sound in the sky, there's sound in earth, there's sound in everything. But the material sound is not all pervading. The material sound, like for example, your radio sound waves or sound that comes from the TV, has a limit to where it can pervade, right? Because this is material sound. It's got a limit. But the sound which is coming from the spiritual world, right? That sound pervades everywhere, the entire universe, right? And Prabhupada says this, that sound is all pervading. That is a scientific fact. But if that sound is potent, then it can penetrate even the material sky and go to the spiritual sky and go to Krishna directly. That sound is Hare Krishna, right? And then in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and this verse is very famous, very famous. All the devotees will know this verse where it says, Harer Nam, Harer Nam, Harer Nam Hi Kevalam, Kalau Nashti Eva Nashti Eva Nashti Eva Gatir Anyatha. In this age of Kali, there is no other means, no other means, no other means for self-realization than chanting the holy name, chanting the holy name, chanting the holy name of Lord Hari. 3 times it is being repeated, no other means than chanting the holy name. Now the holy name is not a material sound. It is a sound which has come from the spiritual world. It is not something that is come from here. And there is this very famous song by, which is a favorite bhajan of Srila Prabhupada, Hari Hari Bifale. And in that, there is a verse which says, the song is written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's a very beautiful song. If you've not heard it, then I would request you all to, listen to it and read the meanings, because it is extremely beautiful. So in that, it says, I'll sing it because even if I say it, it won't sound as nice. Golokera Premadhana Harinama Sankirtana. So it says that this Harinam Sankirtan is coming from Golok. It is Golokera Premadhan. It is coming from there, Harinama Sankirtan. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur is singing, Ratina Janmile Kinotai. So he's saying, I have not formed any attachment for this song. Prabhupada in his lecture, he says that, we develop attachment for all kinds of sounds of the radio, of the television, but we are not developing the attachment for this sound which has actually come from the spiritual world. And then he goes on to sing, Samsara Vishanale Dishani Bihiya Jwale Juraite na koi no pai. He says, in this material world, my heart is always burning on account of so many miseries. Yeah. And then he says, Juraite na koi no pai, but I just cannot find out the way how to get out of it. But, and then of course it goes on to say that the way to get out of it is this sound vibration, it will get us out from this blazing fire of this material condition. If we just sincerely, with complete surrender and faith, chant the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, we will, and Prabhupada says this, we will for sure get out of this material world and go back home to Godhead. So just as a recap, while I stop sharing the screen, just as a recap, three very important principles that we've learned from today's verse. First principle is that just by learning the Vedas, if you're not reaching the goal, which is the goal is to self-realize, the goal is to understand who Lord Krishna is, what is my relation with Lord Krishna, then learning the Vedas or any other scriptures is just futile. And only jnana will not take you to the Lord. It is the mercy of the devotees and the mercy of the Lord. You can attract the mercy of the Lord by performing bhakti, by performing devotional service. The second principle we learned is that in order to understand how to perform devotional service, what is bhakti, one has to approach a bona fide spiritual master. Even Krishna and even Mahaprabhu, when they were here during their pastimes, they also surrendered to a spiritual master. So who are we? Unless we surrender to a spiritual master, we will not understand anything. And once we understand and realize, then there is no need for us to perform any other kind of Vedic rituals. And the third point that we took from here is how this Shabda Brahma pervades the entire universe, pervades, in fact, not just the universe, it is coming from the spiritual world. This Shabda, this holy name of the Lord, is not something of this material world. It is spiritual in nature. It is Krishna himself. And in this Kali Yuga, there is no other way to approach the Lord other than chanting the holy names. And that is why one must try and sincerely, with full surrender, chant the holy names as much as possible. So thank you. I'll stop now. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free. You can unmute yourself or you can even type in the chat box.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you so much for such an amazing class, Mataji. It's clarified a couple of questions that I've been carrying in my head for almost a year now. And
Wow.
could I clarify that with you then, Mataji?
Yes.
So in terms of the pastimes that you mentioned from CC, I was thinking of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So he was an impersonalist, but yet he was serving as one of the main pujaris in the Jagannath temple. So was he at that level where he was just performing rituals but didn't have devotion till he met Mahaprabhu?
That's right, because if you know, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in fact said to Mahaprabhu that why are you like a sentimentalist just chanting the holy names on the streets?
Yes.
No, that was not Sarvabhauma. Sorry, I'm thinking of the other one. No, but Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya tried to tell Mahaprabhu that, you know, you are such a learned young sannyasi. You should be learning the scriptures. And remember, then he sat down and for 7 days he tried to teach him from the scriptures. So he had the knowledge. He knew the scriptures. He was one of the most renowned scholars of his time. But he did not have devotion. He did not have bhakti. If you remember, and I'll give you a very small story, which will see how Sarvabhauma then changed. Ritualistic brahmanas or smarta brahmanas, till they don't perform their morning activities, that is, once they wake up, they will have their, the bath and, purify themselves, perform their pujas, and then they will partake of any prasad. But there is a pastime where Mahaprabhu goes from the Jagannath Puri temple straight to Sarvabhauma's house, knocks on his door. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is actually sleeping and he wakes up and Mahaprabhu gives him the prasad, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya immediately honors the prasad at that moment straight away. Now, this is the difference. Now, why this difference is because before he was a Smarta Brahmin, performing all the rituals, following all the principles, but he did not have that love, that bhakti in his heart. But after being with Mahaprabhu and then changing, then he became a devotee of the Lord. And that is why for him, then those rituals did not have any importance. Hope that makes sense, Hema Mataji.
Yes, Mataji. But he was just serving Jagannathji as a ritual rather than with devotion then. Because he was a
Mataji,
pujari at the same.
yes, but if you see, even during Prabhupada's times, when in Vrindavan, when he took all his white-bodied devotees, the Smarta Brahmanas over there were not willing to allow these devotees to perform any kind of activities like Brahmanical activities, because in their mind, they were thinking that Brahmins and Pujaris are only by birth. So there are two things that we have to understand. One is the Vedic Vidhi, and one is the Pancharatrika Vidhi. Now, Prabhupada obviously spoke of the Pancharatrika Vidhi, wherein one becomes a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Shudra by his activities, not just by his birth. You see, and that is very, very important. So, when in Vrindavan, these Smarta Brahmins were actually accusing Prabhupada of making all these mlechas, they call them the mlechas, and they said, how could you make them Brahmanas? But the point here is that Brahmanas are those who have love of Lord. It is not just by performing various ritualistic activities, but having no faith. Because we see the same story in the in the cobbler and the Brahmin. We also see the same story when Mahaprabhu was visiting the south of India and he came across a Brahmin sitting under a tree reading the Bhagavad Gita, but he was holding the Bhagavad Gita upside down because he was not educated. But he said that my guru has asked me to read the Gita every day. I cannot read it, but I'm just looking at these pictures. And then Mahaprabhu said, why are you crying? He said, I'm crying because I'm looking at the picture where Krishna has become the charioteer of Arjuna. What a compassionate Lord my Lord is. Now you tell me, did the Brahmana who must have read the Bhagavad Gita hundreds of times but not shed a single tear when he came to this, who is greater then? Which Brahmana is greater?
Absolutely wonderful, Mataji. Thank you so much for that clarification. Thank you. Haribol.
Any other questions or comments? So there is a question on the chat group. What did you mean by disappearance? So when we speak of great acharyas, when they're born or when they leave their body, we don't say that they have died. We don't use the word death, simply because we are looking at the soul, and the soul is eternal. The soul does not die ever. The soul is only changing bodies, or for great acharyas, the soul actually will probably go back to where they are coming from, which is probably Goloka Dham. So that is why we call these days as appearance and disappearance days. So when great acharyas are born, they are called as appearance days, and when they leave, they're called as disappearance days. That is one thing. The second question is, the priests in the temple are learned and would have read the Bhagavad Gita, then why do they ask to perform different rituals and worship demigods? So Mataji, here, very, very important thing to understand is that the priests are learned, but it is the same priest who have actually encouraged the caste system in India for so many, many, many years. The reason is that they are scared. They are scared that if everybody starts reading the Gita and understanding the Gita, then my job is at stake. See, these are not pure priests or pure brahmanas who are performing these in order to liberate everybody. They are doing this for their own selfish motives, to get money out of this. If everybody starts understanding the Gita, if everybody starts reading the scriptures, then they will lose their job. And that is why they don't want other people to read. They don't want people to come to the temple and understand things. And they want people to perform these ritualistic activities because that is the way they get money out of it. They get, let's say, money now, but in olden times, they would, barter things. That, there would be grains or there would be cloth or whatever given to the priest, the pujaris. The pujaris were held in very, very respectable positions. And in Vedic times, they were, because they were not greedy. We've heard of a story in the Mahabharata where when Arjuna wanted to gather money in order for Yudhishthir to perform the Ashwamedha Yagya, Krishna said to him that there is this mountain where all the Brahmanas have thrown away the gold plates and whatever had been given to them in charity because they don't need it. The Brahmanas only took what they needed, but that is not the case now. The case now is where the Brahmanas actually are not following anything. Instead, they are only collecting money. In fact, I very shockingly came across just this year when I was visiting India and I was visiting my forefathers' village and whatever. So it's a very rural village. And my father pointed out to me that these are Brahmanas who are now even having non-vegetarian food and all that. They're not following any kind of principles. So they wanted us to be stuck in this form that, I have to perform these rituals in order to progress materially and spiritually. So once you understand the Gita, then you realize that this is a wrong interpretation. Sorry, there's another question. What qualities and qualifications are required for one to become a spiritual master? Is there any knowledge that a spiritual master can pass on that is not in the scriptures? Qualities and qualifications of a spiritual master, very, very important qualities and qualifications are that he only repeats what Krishna is saying. He does not make up his own things. And that is why if you read the Bhagavad Gita as it is by Srila Prabhupada is giving us word to word translations. He is not interpreting anything of his own. He is not saying that Krishna means this or Krishna means that. No, he says Krishna is saying this as it is. So a spiritual master who is repeating exactly what Krishna is saying, who follows all the regulative principles, is not does not have any desire for any material opulences, who can lead his disciples on the spiritual path so that eventually they also realize, what who are we, what is the goal of this life. That is a spiritual master. um, is there any knowledge that a spiritual master can pass on that is not in the scriptures? The spiritual master can sow the seed of bhakti in your heart. Every other knowledge and everything is there in the scriptures, but the seed of bhakti, you can get it from the scriptures, but the spiritual master is the one who will water the seed in order for the seed to grow into a tree. That cannot come through reading n number of scriptures, no matter how many scriptures you read on your own. Unless you get this from devotees, association of devotees, and from the spiritual master, the seed of bhakti will not grow. So yes, that is what the spiritual master can give you. I hope this answers your questions. Okay, there is one question or comment here. I must say some rituals are important, like Havan, etc. And also to develop total faith also takes time. Yes, it takes time. No doubt about that. It takes time. But Prabhupada said that to become a devotee of the Lord takes 1 second. So on one hand, one may feel it takes time. On the other hand, Prabhupada says it takes 1 second. How it takes 1 second? If you develop complete faith and just surrender to Krishna, it literally takes 1 second to become a devotee of the Lord. And when you become a devotee of the Lord, you will realize that nothing else is important. None of the rituals are important. Nothing is important. Again, I remember the story of Shabri. Shabri was living in the forest. She wasn't performing any rituals. She wasn't doing any yagyas. All she was doing is her guru had given her the instruction that the Supreme Lord will come and you will be liberated when he comes. And when Sri Ram came to her, all she did was served him fruits. The fruits that she tasted to see that they were not sour. So she didn't follow any kind of principles that, we cannot serve something that has been tasted. We have to have tulsi leaf before we serve. She didn't follow all of that. So the point here is that once you develop that complete love for Krishna, and I'm not saying that, I'm at that stage or this one is everybody's at different stages. So before we reach that stage, yes, if you need to follow some rituals, if you need to, do other things, it's fine. But have the goal in mind, that the goal is that, am I making progress towards that goal? Are these activities helping me to reach that goal? If they are not, then they are futile. And that is why you need the association of devotees who can constantly guide you, or, say to you that, maybe this is not needed or maybe this is needed. So that's why you need association of devotees. Progress in spiritual life is always in the association of devotees. And if I'll just share one small thing, when I came to Krishna consciousness, what touched me the most was how different it is from material life. In the material world, all of us are only trying to go ahead of each other. How can I supersede? How can I go ahead? And in spiritual life, everybody is thinking, how do I push this person forward? How do I take this person along with me? And that is so beautiful about spirituality. There is no selfishness.
That's a lovely thought. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Joli Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Very wonderful stories and wonderful class. But I am stuck with this, the rituals. To achieve a guru, you have so many rituals before you achieve that guru, isn't that right? So,
Like what kind of rituals, Mataji?
like the principles, for the regulative principles and all the things that you have to you perform, and it's quite a lot. So
No,
if
but
you
Joli,
can you
sorry,
possibly can you possibly love Krishna so much without having to perform these? That's what my questions are. If you truly love Krishna, do you need to, like the Brahman, some of the Brahmins, they eat meat, is that right?
Yes, yes.
And are they, and do, I mean, this is the kind of thing I'm thinking of. Is it, to just clarify it, that's all. I'm not doubting, I'm just clarifying.
No, I know where you're coming from, Joli Mataji. I can totally understand. So first thing first, what you're calling rituals, which is following the regulative principles, chanting a fixed number of rounds every day, those do not come under rituals. Now, why they don't come under rituals?
Right, okay.
Yes, I'll tell you why they don't come under rituals. We are in this material world. We are under the influence of the three modes of material nature constantly. Constantly. We have not reached the stage where we have developed pure love of Krishna, right? We are not in that stage where we can 24/7 think of Krishna. Because we are not at that stage, we have to practice. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, Antakale, at the time of death, if you think of me. Now, the problem is that if I don't practice it, then at the time of death, I will not be able to think of Krishna. Because I am not a pure devotee of the Lord as yet. I have not reached that stage of pure devotional service. And that is why I have been given this sadhana bhakti path to follow, wherein I have to perform various activities. These activities, why they are not rituals, is because I am not performing this in order to get any kind of material benefit. See, when you read the Vedas, right? Most of the time, the Vedas is giving you ritualistic activities, or the pujaris tell us to do different kind of things because we want to get some kind of material benediction. Let's take the example of Hiranyakashipu. He performed so many austerities, but why was he performing austerities? Did he perform it to get pure love of Lord? No, he performed it because he wanted material benediction, right? So that is the difference between performing these austerities to get material benediction and to get spiritual benediction. So what we are doing right now is to get spiritual credits, and that is why they are not called ritualistic. So like how a sports person is performing, he's it's an endurance test. How much can I push myself? We as sadhakas have to perform how can I think of the Lord 24/7? And these things help us to come to that stage. I hope this helps, Joli Mataji.
Yes, very much so. Thank you, Mataji. So Krishna is always loving us anyway, but
Yes.
we have to develop a stage where we can love him totally.
Remember one thing, Jolie Mataji, if we are not in a pure conscious state, obviously we will not reach there. But let's look at a situation where we are in Goloka Vrindavan, but because you're not in a pure state, we are envious. We are, of the other activities. Let's say some gopis have got the chance to make the garlands today, and I'm stuck here just sweeping the floor. I'm going to be envious. I want to make the garlands, because I have not reached that pure conscious state. So Krishna has put us in this prison, the material world, in order to purify ourselves. Until we purify ourselves, we will not go there. And to purify ourselves, what are the tools that he has given us? The tools are that we chant, we listen, we follow the regulative principles, because the regulative principles are pillars of the truth, the absolute truth. They are different pillars. And if you break those principles, then you're actually, the legs of that is being broken one by one, like cleanliness, like, charity, like, treating everybody equal. Why is it no meat eating? Because you have to look at everybody as a soul where the Supreme Lord resides. That is why it is not no meat eating. There's no other reason for it. How can I kill another person in whose body the Supreme Lord is residing? So it's very important to understand why we are following these regulative principles, why we are chanting, and then you will realize that these are not rituals. These are to give us spiritual credits. Right?
Haribol, Mataji, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I know it is close to 9. If devotees have to leave, please feel free. It is quite late, but if you have any other questions, I am happy to answer.
Hare Krishna Mataji, just wanted to say what a wonderful class it was with all the stories, and it was so beautiful. It was so nice. It was so different as well. It was not about the slides and all the knowledge, and you have to remember point wise, and you have to remember all these verses. It was nice stories, and it was so good. It was so different.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. There's just one question in the chat. What is a spiritual master in this day and age books? Thank you so much. All right. Okay. No, Mataji, we do have spiritual masters in ISKCON. Of course, we have Srila Prabhupada's books, and they are always there. Srila Prabhupada said that he is in his books. But besides that, we do have spiritual masters in ISKCON. Like yesterday, if you listen to the class by His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj, he is a spiritual master. He has got so many disciples all over, and he is helping everybody to move forward in their spiritual life. So we do have spiritual masters. My spiritual master is His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. So there are many in ISKCON. Who do I follow? Well, that is something that it's a journey again. Krishna from within guides you. So, if you've just started on this journey, try and listen to various lectures of different acharyas of ISKCON, and you will get the guidance from within. Pray to Krishna. He will help you. He will help you. Yeah.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Mataji, who's asking this question, your name doesn't come up. Please, may I ask your name?
Surbi. Surbi.
Sorry?
Surbi.
Sundari.
Surbi. Surbi.
Surabhi Mataji. Okay, Hare Krishna, Surabhi Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Your name just comes up as Hare Krishna. That's why.
Thank you, Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Okay, I think it's quite late now, 9 o'clock. If no other questions, then we can stop here. Vanchakalpatarubhascha kripa sindhu Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna.
Haribol, thank you
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Wonderful
Hare
class.
Krishna. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very
Hare
much.
Krishna.
Dandot Pranam.